You know what? I need some theme music because I do this all kind of cold, and then there's nothing behind me except my dog drinking water, and then it gets weird. But whatever, it doesn't matter. Anyway, welcome to the Comic Binge. I am Paul Herman. I'm one of the hosts. I'll be joined with Chris and a special guest. I'm very excited to always bring on. I always beg him to come on. He always he humors me. I'm very thankful for it. But anyway, today we got a great show planned. We have MCU required reading. Hawkeye, if you love the Disney Plus show, we got some comics for you to read. At least I have some comics for you to read anyway, and I'm curious what the other people I have on, what they think. And other things, I got a couple of cool, fun little announcements. But before I do that, I'll introduce my little cast here. A little cast here of course, the usual Chris Clow, Mr. Chris Clow. Hello, sir.
Hey, how's it going?
Going
Just
well,
the
sir.
usual, boring,
Shut
boring
up.
white
Stop
bread
this.
Chris.
Don't do this to me. This is so boring.
All right. Here's how you spice it up. You go with the Simpsons Mr. Plow song.
Oh, there you
Mr.
go.
Plow, that's my name. My name again.
It is Mr. Clown.
Mr. Clown. I like that. I like that a lot. That's great. And then and our old friend, my new old friend now, I would say, Dark Chocolate himself here. Hello, sir.
Hello, how's it going?
Pretty good, man. I am truly thankful. I know you are a busy guy. You are a new Star Wars celebrity, and I am honored to have you on my show. So just know, I
I'm,
want you to know
I'm
that.
trying to be. I'm trying to be.
You
But
are, man.
it's
You are great, and I love that you come on, and it's really appreciative. And I hope to have you on other shows in the future. We've talked a little bit about. I'm really excited about. So we'll get to that in a second. But today, really quickly, before we go into the show, I'm excited to announce. We kind of loosely talked about it, on Twitter before. Starting next month will be the road to the Batman, and we're gonna have a number of shows lined up of comic books like this one right here, Batman Ego, like this, and other great books like this one, Dark Knight, Dark City, and other ones that we're going to talk about. We're going to be leading up to the Batman movie, and this is basically, if you want to get hyped for the movie for the Batman, we've got some great episodes leading up to it. It kind of loosely kicks off with Batman and Robin, the new Jeff Lemire series that I absolutely adore.
Other way around. Other way
Well,
around.
but is it Robin and Batman? It's not Robin and Batman, is it?
It's Robin, dude. Don't you
Is
have
it?
it like nearby? Yeah,
Yeah,
it's Robin and Batman.
Where is it? I don't even know where it is. It's there somewhere. I don't know. Anyway, but no, it's a fantastic series. We're going to talk about that next week. I'll be kind of loosely the first one kicked off, and then I'll have a bunch of new guests with basically Ryan Haas from Batman on Film will join us. Chris will probably be on a bunch of us, but a bunch of other people. So really excited to do that, and that's going to
Yeah,
be.
because Chris doesn't like talking about Batman.
No, he
at
doesn't.
all, right?
Ever.
He just hates talking
And
about
I'm really
Batman.
excited because basically a new show for the channel about Batman that I'm going to announce, or I'm going to not announce, but it's going to be under the new channel or the new episode titles of A Gotham Knight as an NIGHT. So I'm really excited because this will be like the first official one next week. I've already created a playlist for all my Batman related episodes I've done so far. So anything Batman related now will be under the A Gotham Knight playlist and episode titles. So really excited to do that. And I talked about it a couple months ago, and now it's going to come to fruition. These are all books that Ryan Haas picked out, made me recommend. So we're going to talk about them. But I digress. We're going to talk about Hawkeye. And I know Chris obviously likes Hawkeye. I know my friend Dark Chocolate here. He loves Hawkeye. He likes comic books. I don't know much about Dark Chocolate. Your insight of Marvel and MCU in general. I know you like the comic books. We've talked a long
Mhm.
time that one night about a lot of stuff, but comic books are definitely on there. My question is, what's your take on the MCU and kind of in general? Are you a giant fan, moderate fan? And then tell me your thoughts on Hawkeye, the Disney Plus series.
So excuse me.
Sorry.
I'm a huge. I am a big fan of the MCU. I mean, it's obviously not perfect, but it to me is kind of like the adventures line of comics, where it's like, yeah, it's brighter. It's for a little bit younger of an audience. It's a great place to like get the gist of things and jump in. I love even when we're getting similar stories to what we've told before. Seeing some of these things recontextualized has been a lot of fun. Even if they can't truly do things justice, like
Right.
Civil War is not the same.
A little different.
wish to God we actually got like a Planet Hulk or something like that.
Oh
I
yeah,
understand
hell
how the
yeah.
rights and stuff like that
Word,
work,
word.
but no, overall it's cool because these are characters that I've already fallen in love with, and I'm seeing a lot of their stories told in new and interesting ways, and I'm getting to like for some of these, man, like you have to read. So I read all of Civil War and its tie-ins, the first one, right? If I'm not mistaken, that's 218 comics, something like that.
It's crazy. You're not wrong.
So I'm so happy that I can now talk about this stuff with other people and get them interested and being like, okay, I think you're gonna want to read this one, and like, I think it's really built up like a community with Marvel and gotten some love to a lot of these characters that no one frankly cared about before.
Yeah, yeah. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. So, what was your take on Disney Plus Hawkeye? I'm assuming you watched it. So, what was your take on the series?
Um, I wasn't as hype on it as a lot of.
Hmm.
Well, no, let me pull that back. I felt like Hawkeye was one of the least important characters in his own show, which is
That's
okay.
that's fair. Yeah.
It was because it was introducing the next Hawkeye, right? Kate does take over the mantle. I
Mhm.
loved seeing Kingpin get back in action,
Yeah, dude.
and
Yeah.
yeah, this one it was just a ride overall, and plus they did again, it's that thing where we're getting these characters in places that we're familiar with, but the story's being told differently,
Mhm.
and like I owe her future stepdad an apology because, and then like you go back and you rewatch it and you're like, oh no, he's not being creepy at all. He's just like
He's just a
he's just
jolly
like
dude. He's a jolly guy.
he's just a himbo who likes swords.
I love, dude. Jack is one of my. I want him to be swordsman so damn bad, so damn bad. Oh my god. Oh my god. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, but like most of the product, there's a little bit of jank in it. There's no repercussions for all the people that he slaughtered, and of course they're just like murdering people out on the street. Like, I mean, because Jack has a sword, those people aren't okay, and like everyone just like
Right.
walks off, and some of the parts are is interesting, but no, I really enjoyed the show.
Yeah. Before I give it to you, Chris, I on the MCU fan show, I've been very upfront in not being a huge Hawkeye MCU fan. Never been a big Jeremy Renner fan of the show. Though I will say I've been more I because of Endgame, I like him a lot more. And I think this series was a continuation of that. And it definitely felt like they gave it some realism. I guess some realism with Hawkeye, with him like going deaf a little bit, having like the fact that he's not a superhero and having all these different fights of getting older. He's not the same hero, even though like all the things he went through, he should have more than just like a little bit of a damaged hearing, right? So I mean, whatever. But again, in the context of the show, I thought it worked real well, and it was nice to see that. I will say, I'm curious what your thoughts are about Kate Bishop, and Chris, you too. It's a different characterization of the character, and I don't think it's a bad thing. It was a lot. It was I like the more like snotty, kind of stuck up a little bit, like very overconfident, but reason to be overconfident. She's very good. This Kate Bishop's a little more funny, a little more unsure of herself, maybe a little bit, but it worked well. I like Katie. I always forget her name. Not Katie. What's her name? Haley Seinfeld. She I thought did a phenomenal job and maybe buy into her character. I really liked the character, so yeah, I thought it did a solid job for the most part. But Chris, or really quick, did you like Kate Bishop before the show, Dark Chocolate?
Um, I was not. I actually wasn't the biggest fan of her being really snotty, But
Okay.
the character as she warms up and they have that rapport, it's really interesting and really cool. And so I'm looking forward to talking about that more, especially with the
With one
second
shot.
comic.
Yeah. So, yeah. Which again, there's a reason why I picked that one. But anyway, Chris, thoughts on Hawkeye, Disney Plus series?
I thought it was better than it had any right to be. Really.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Um,
Exactly.
I-
Well said.
Hawkeye really, and you're going to hate that I'm saying this, but really my first into kind of enjoying Hawkeye as a character the most, because I had read sporadic classic Avengers stories while I was a comic book retailer. But really, one of the first stories that kind of gave me an in to appreciating him on a deeper level was Ultimate Hawkeye by Jonathan Hickman. Yeah, and I know, yeah, you don't like that, but
Dude, what happened to the Ultimate Universe again?
well,
Oh,
it
that's
wasn't
wait.
gone at the
Okay,
time I read the story. It was coming out when I read it.
Well, I
But
don't
it does.
care. No one else cares. Anyway, I'm sorry.
Why are you so?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I know.
I'm
sorry.
trying to give you an honest perspective about how I connected
You know
with
how I feel
Hawkeye
with the
for the
Ultimate
first time in a
Universe.
major way, and
Anyway,
you just got to
continue.
dump on anyway. The thing that I appreciated about it, well, first of all, like there was the familial aspect that was there.
Yeah.
And this was, I mean, I read this story years before MCU Hawkeye was even a thing, right? It was a couple of years before the first Avengers movie came out, I think is when that series came out. It was only 4 issues. But I also like the idea that that instead of just simply being a skilled guy, there was actually like a partial mutation that gave him a reason for being as good as he was. And I always thought that that would translate really well to a movie, but they decided to take things in a different
Thank
direction.
God.
And really, what?
Anyway,
You're interrupting me again. What's the problem?
I'm
What is
sorry.
the problem?
I'm sorry. You know, I'll stop. I'll stop.
It was a really interesting way to describe why he is otherworldly good at being a marksman. Like it gave him an edge, particularly against characters like Bullseye, right? I mean, it was just like this is what brings him to the level of an Avenger, and I thought that was cool. And Hickman is a really good writer in terms of condensing some pretty complex ideas into a pretty efficient delivery mechanism. So that was a story that kind of made me pay more attention to Hawkeye, and that's when, this was around the time that he had first really come back after being killed and disassembled. So he was back as Ronin in the new Avengers, like right after Civil War.
Yeah.
And it was just like it was a really interesting time to explore Clint Barton, because he's kind of always a guy who's used to being on the back foot and rolling with the new Avengers at the time that he did for those stories. He felt like very naturally in his element. So I thought that stuff was cool. Yeah, really. Yeah. Thanks, Paul.
You're not well.
Yeah.
I mean, well, they're probably unsubscribed. They're tired of me stuttering all the time and clogging things up.
Yeah, because Ultimate fans specifically are more pro.
They're not tolerant of me. They're not tolerant of me. Anyway, but you like the series though, the Disney Plus series.
Oh, well, yeah, all of that to say that, Barton is a character that I think provides a really important kind of humanistic look into these otherworldly icons that largely make up the Avengers.
Yeah,
He's kind of a middle ground between Thor and Spider-Man. It's kind of a cool way for him to be positioned in the team. So, I mean, MCU Hawkeye, I never really cared all that much about for most of his life until probably, even though he wasn't in it, Infinity War made me think more about him, and I was reflecting more on what he did in Civil War, and I thought that was kind of a cool application of him. And then there's Endgame, and Endgame really, like you said, I mean, it totally reorients what he did. So the fact that the show decided to follow up on those threads was really interesting to me, and the fact that you're also throwing in a reasonably accurate portrayal of Kate Bishop, at least to the way that I always understood her. And you couple that with this piece of his past that he has to overcome, and everything is combining into like really interesting use of supporting characters that might not be quite what you expect. Yeah, I thought it was way better than it had, like I said, any right to be.
I totally agree with that. I think that's actually really well said. And I again, it took me a while to get used to Kate a little bit, but or a while, but I like this version of Kate, and I just love the journey they went on, and I did think that they adapted and took so much from that again the David Aja and Matt Fraction series that everyone probably heard all about before reading watching this show, and rightfully so. I thought they did a great job of incorporating all those important aspects of that comic book series and putting it into the MCU and making it really work. So I think that's one thing I wanted to bring up. And speaking of the Matt Fraction David Aja series, if you're wondering why did I not include that for required reading, well, there's a big reason why. Because I'm not.
We've already read it.
Well,
Oh.
exactly. Yeah,
Everybody
right.
has
Everyone's
already
read
read
it.
it, probably.
Thank you. Dark Chocolate gets it. He gets it. No, but and again, if you haven't, I mean, this is low hanging fruit at this point. Listen, if you haven't read this series, sorry, I don't mean to do that to Dark Chocolate here. I'll move it around here. There we go. If you haven't read this series, I mean, it's whatever. I can't. I don't know what to tell you. Like it's a great. It's the best Hawkeye story ever written. I mean, let's just be real. I'm not going to deny it. I'm not the biggest Matt Fraction fan, but I think him and David Aja did a phenomenal job on the series, and like the covers are great. I own most of the series. I think I have a second printing of this issue. I think I have like the all purple version of this, but no, it's amazing. So this is low hanging fruit, though. I mean, everyone heard all about this. This is what the show is basically about. It's phenomenal. Go read it. Whatever. I'm not like that though. I want to do something that's a lot different, and I want to give people a different perspective of Hawkeye because I've always liked 616 Hawkeye in the comic books, and he doesn't have a lot of his own material besides the Fraction run. Besides a couple little things here and there, maybe some stints on West Coast Avengers you could go to, but just kind of off by the chance, I picked up this graphic novel of an old graphic novel of his original miniseries written by Mark Grunwald, and also it says drawn by Mark Grunwald, but Brett Breeding, I think, did the finishes on it, which I heard that Mark Grunwald wasn't a terrible artist, but he knew he wasn't very good, and I think Breeding did most of the cleanup work on that series. But anyway, he worked on a series. Mark Grunwald, if you don't know, is a phenomenal, underrated talent, an editor at Marvel for many, many years, and he wrote this great series, and which I thought was great. And this is the series Hawkeye. This is Hawkeye miniseries 1985, and issues 1 through 4. And this is what I read this and I loved it. I thought this series was really great, mainly because this is the origin of Mockingbird and Hawkeye's like getting together essentially. And it really dives into the psyche of Clint Barton in the 616 universe and goes deep on it, in my opinion. So there's lots of I thought to dig into this, and there's a lot of even Easter eggs I thought into not a lot, but a few Easter eggs in the show that they kind of they took from the series. But with you guys specifically, I wanted to just ask you or have you guys read this and tell me what you thought because one of the things I thought it was worth reading was anyway because again, there's that Mockingbird Hawkeye relationship and what that means. So, what's your take on I guess I'll go to you, Chris, about going into the series. What was your take on with Hawkeye? I think it's required reading because it's the origin of this great relationship that they have. But what's your take on this?
It did a solid job at the beginning, especially I thought of justifying why it was being told. Like my perspective on it before, like when you gave me the issues, I was like, oh yeah, I've never read this. I'm glad that he assigned this. But why? The like Hawkeye was very much like, I know that he had kind of drifted away from the Avengers during this time, but still his identity was defined by his membership on the team. So what is it that this series does that kind of tries to justify a solo-ish Hawkeye story being told? And honestly, I mean, after the first issue, I had fun with it. I thought that it was a really fun story that totally bear hugged the concept of him getting away from the team and trying to carve his own path. Yeah. And he's really self-deprecating and talking about how his luck has been with women and what his situation has been when it comes to like trying to find a job and an identity outside of his membership in the Avengers.
Yeah.
So I like the fact that it bear hugged all that stuff. I was kind of surprised at how the whole like house of cards that was built for his life at the beginning of the issue was totally gone by the end of it. Like it moves fast.
It does. It's 4 issues. I mean,
right. Yeah. And granted, I wasn't sure what the pace was going to be before I actually read the books, but I didn't expect that. And modern standards, it's hard to read a book from 1983 now, just because you can either like apply modern standards to it and judge it on that basis. I don't think that's a good idea personally. I
Yeah,
think you should
I
judge it
agree.
based on what the medium was doing at the time, and remember that like a lot of stories that you read had not happened yet. I think it's like I'm not an originalist, I guess, when it comes to reading these kind of older comic book stories. So the pacing was a little bit clunkier than what I'm used to, but you cannot say that it's not efficient in terms
Yeah.
of getting things done.
Yeah.
And it was an interesting way to. I know that that Bobby Morse appeared several years before this the first time, and she had a couple of other identities, and her origin story in the series alludes to that. But I thought that this was a solid way to introduce her to people that maybe weren't aware of her before.
Yeah.
So overall, like I'm sure we'll talk about it more, but overall, I had fun with this, and I enjoyed the experience, and it's a pretty brisk read at only 4 issues.
Yeah, and that's the thing about, and I'm a big Mark Grunwald fan, and if you don't know who Mark Grunwald is, again, he has the longest run on Captain America comic books ever. And if you're not familiar, well, people, is he like Alan Moore? Is he Neil Gaiman? No, he's not. That's not his bag. He is very simple, but he's responsible for, again, Falcon Winter Soldier. That whole thing is basically off his Captain America comic books, 100%. U.S. Agent, all Mark Grunwald, and
Well, all the U.S. agent stuff, at least. Not so much the Sam stuff, but
no, not the Sam stuff, but again, I'm talking about the crux of the story,
right,
of
right.
of the Flag Smashers. It's all based around Grunwald's stuff, and he's just a great, I think, a solid writer. He's not the best dialogue, but his plots I think are good, and I think his I just love how he knows these characters. The characterizations are always there. The dialogue's not always there, but dialogue back in the 80s it's hard for me to get. It'd be hard to anyone, because dialogue from back then is all bad, in my opinion, for the most part. In my opinion, but I still love it because it's still great. So anyway, I thought reading this, I was really surprised how well I liked it, like you said, Chris, and I was like, man, like I didn't realize, oh, this is the origin for how they got together.
So when did you first read this then?
Just a few months ago.
Oh, okay.
I picked up at Ancient Comics.
Okay. Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Good story.
It was only $5. I'm like, all right, I'll take this. And I loved it. I'm like, man, like this is like, people need to read this, because people, again, at the end of the Disney Plus show, we get that his wife is Agent 7. Is it 17? 7? Is that what it is? I forgot. Yeah, 17.
19.
19, whatever. Yeah, thank you, Josh. But I'm like, oh, like this is a good way for people to know, like, this is how they kind of knew each other, and in the comic books, so how they got together. So I thought that was a really kind of a cool coincidence. I love Mark Grunwald. There's some great panels here and pages here I'll get into in a second. But Dark Chocolate, I'm very curious what you think about this miniseries. I have no idea. I respect your opinion of comics. You know your comics, sir. So I'm curious where do you lie on this required reading for this Hawkeye comic books?
Well, I'm glad you suggested it, because I would never have read this had you not suggested. Certainly, that I do have this block of, if it's older than a certain point, it makes me reticent to jump into it because of the vast differences with how the stories are being told.
That's fair. Yeah.
I mean, there was a lot of limitations around how artwork was done, and so it makes certain things, feel clunkier, which doesn't mean it's bad or worse or anything like that. But
good point. Yeah.
Like I'm a big anime fan, but like there's certain anime I can't go before a certain year, because I just what is happening. But no, with this story, it did move fast, but you got all of the bits and pieces. You got to fully understand like who, like we said, who Hawkeye is and why he's doing what he's doing and why he went solo. I love the everyman stories. You know what I mean? Like, when you get to him just like pining over, like, oh man, like I couldn't get Black Widow, and I couldn't get Wanda, so I'm just gonna lie in the dirt and die or whatever. And you're like, come on, man, get up! Like, First of all, that's like saying I didn't get on the 96 Bulls, so I'm gonna quit basketball. Like, you're shooting
You had
You're
to put
aiming way
96
up
rolls on
here,
me, didn't you?
you know.
You beat my Sonics, man. Come on, you're killing me here. You're killing me here. You're killing me.
Although NBA Jam, Seattle Supersonics were my
Yep.
team because I had
Peyton.
Peyton
Yep.
and
Yep. Yep.
Kemp,
Kemp. Yep.
and yeah, those.
All right. All right. You're forgiven. You're forgiven. All right, continue. I'm sorry.
No, there's it's there's a lot of dialogue. It's just there's just so much dialogue.
There's a lot of exposition. I agree. I
No,
agree.
Back in the day though, I actually do love reading old Doctor Doom comics for that reason.
Yeah, dude. Yes.
But yeah, the pacing is hard for me. So it is one I enjoyed reading. It's not one I'm necessarily going to recommend to a lot of people unless I know that they are interested in going back and reading some older things. And see, is this the origin of his Sky Cycle thing? Because I've always loved that. I've always loved that.
Maybe it might be. And that's the thing, and this is why I love doing these shows for MC required readings, because for the people who there's people who don't care about the comics, right? There's people out there who love the MCU and they know their comics exist and they might read a few, but they don't really care about going deep. But there's people who really love the character of Hawkeye. I feel like this is a and that's why. And again, Chris, we had our Eternals show. And you're like, I don't know why you picked this for required reading. That's a fair question about my. But I said, well, because I think like this kind of gives a good example of what could happen potentially in the future, but also just like kind of for people who are really into those characters, what's not the low hanging fruit? What's a little bit deeper of a story I think to go into? And I feel like these 4 issues specifically are a great example of the character, like you brought up the Dark Chocolate, and I love that you kind of get in like, yeah, no, like you get an idea of like the everyman story, and this guy is just like he's kind of beat down, and that's kind of what I think he was a little bit in a different way in a Disney Plus show. And I just feel like if you're really into like Hawkeye, these are definitely comics you need to read because you get the origin of Bobby and him hooking up and becoming an item. You get more of insight of like what he's kind of as a his psychological awareness of as a character that they use a lot of maybe different things from I think into the MCU. I don't know. I just think this is a good solid Hawkeye story. When it's not counting the Matt Fraction stuff.
I also say sometimes I miss having like a villain like Oddball of just like
I like Oddball too. He was great.
Why do you exist? But also thank you for existing. It's
he was to be honest, the way Grunwald wrote him, I was actually like, man, he's actually. I kind of wanted to. I forgot to look him up and see whatever happened to him because he was kind of an interesting character. Like, I mean. Again, I thought the action scenes were really good. I thought between him and Bobby and Mockingbird and all that stuff, I thought that was really great. Crossfire was a little interesting. He's interesting. He's probably like my least favorite part of the whole comic book. But I love stuff like this. Like this is great. I love his whole explanation of everything. But again, I thought it was a good, solid like story. I kind of again showing you what it's like to be Hawkeye in the 616 universe. So, that's why I thought if people are really into Hawkeye, I feel like this is definitely worth reading. And I'm curious, before we wrapping up this conversation about this, would you guys so Dark Chocolate, you wouldn't recommend it to average fans, but for people who are wanting more Hawkeye, and you can say yes or no. What would your take on recommend this as a recommendation?
I mean, not to stereotype, but like if they're under 30, I wouldn't recommend it.
That's
just in general, myself, I'm 34.
I'm 40.
I feel like you if you started reading comics in the 90s, then you can go backwards like 10 years and it's not too much of a jump. But if you started reading in 2015, you can't, and you read something 30 years ago, like it's weird. It's weird.
That's fair. Yeah.
You were talking before this started. We were talking about Boba Fett, and I was doing a bunch of research for it. So I pulled the old comic, which was Star Wars issue 83, like the Star Wars 81? Run.
Is it 81? You mean? Well,
81.
back? Yeah, he comes back.
The
I have that
first
comic.
time he escapes out of the
Yep, the
Sarlacc.
Yep. Joe Duffy.
And it's just such a funny because it's like just the way it's drawn and all this stuff. It feels clunky and like
I love it. I love it though. I love that comic so damn much.
it just burps him out like in one panel.
But dude, that panel though where he's like laying out, so good, so good.
You know, I'm curious, just if you don't mind,
course.
like the apex of your experience with comics, Darth Chocolate, if you had to like pick a story that could communicate to the people who are going to watch this what you see as like primo comics from anything, whether it's superheroes, whether it's Star Wars or something else,
That's a really good question.
what would it be?
Like a specific comic book series,
like when you just think of oh man, this is what a comic is supposed to be, like what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Oh man,
could be anything. Could be an arc, an issue,
question, man.
An artist.
First thing that comes to my mind is watching Spider-Man in the black suit beating the hell out of Wilson Fisk, because that made a big impression on me.
Or post
right after that.
Back in Black.
That is a great issue.
That's just
Ron Garney, I think.
Yeah, Garney.
Right?
Yeah, that's where my mind went, because the stuff that is, because I've been familiar with these characters for such a long time, and so the issues and things that push the status quo are just like the peak stuff for me. Of course, that doesn't mean I want to see everything push the status quo. Looking at you, DC Comics, like y'all need to pull it back, set up a status quo before doing that. But yeah, for me, the whole period of time around 2012 is when, I went from, is when I really embraced my nerdiness. Like, it was always there, but like around that time I moved up to Portland, was doing my own thing, and I just fell down the hole of comics. Yeah, for about 5 years.
What? I didn't know this. What?
Good times.
Bro, I mean, Powell's? I mean, like,
oh
right?
yeah.
Oh yeah.
I remember going to Powell's, like, because at the time I was waiting for the next issue of Umbrella Academy to come out, and I kept going there trying to like wait for it. Of course, it never came out.
Right. Oh my god,
no one ever knew about it. But yeah, I was reading it back then, and like, no, that was my thing. I lived in a little place called Felony Flats, and then I moved from there to what we call Hills Burrito. But yeah, I had some good times there.
All right, sorry.
Are you still in Oregon, or are you in a different state now?
I'm in San Diego now.
Oh, you're in California. Okay, yeah. So
I didn't know.
It's funny.
It's crazy.
You and I are the same age, even though like I look like I'm 45 because my dad had a white streak in his head by the time he was 16, and he passed it down to me. But I think in terms of like the eras lining up, like you mentioned that issue of Amazing Spider-Man, which I think was 2007, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, 8 or 7, somewhere around there.
And 7 was the year I started working as a comic book retailer. So I was really dialed into stuff around that time. So I can see where you're coming from, but I am curious what takes you, like when you're just kind of feeling like you're in the mood for something that maybe is past that 15-year-old mark. How far back do you go? Like, do you read, I don't know, like year one, like a Batman year one, or do you read something? Do you prefer to just keep things more recent?
And I'll go back into the 90s. I don't often go prior to the 90s. And that's also largely because there's so much stuff.
Oh, sure.
I want to read, and it's hard to know where to pick things up and where not to, and what's going to apply because of how much things change. Mm-hmm. But like, it's also just a mental block too, because the 90s are what got me in the first place. Mm-hmm. My uncle, who's 4 years older than me, lived with us, and waking up every morning to watch X-Men animated series and stuff, and Spider-Man, and and all that stuff is what like got me in. And so finding those comics and those stories and reading from those points onward, and trying to catch up, where I would take 2-3 years off of reading Spider-Man comics, and now there's like 1,000 of them that I need. There's 1,000 of them. There's like 6 different comic lines, and I got to catch up on all of them.
The thing that annoys me, and maybe you feel differently, but I remember stopping reading Amazing one time, like back in 2014 or 2015 at number 6. And then I was like, you know what? I need to pick up Amazing again. And I went into the shop to check it out. And the latest issue that came out was number 6. And it's like,
yeah, it's backwards.
How the hell is this one?
Yeah, it's backwards for sure, for sure. But so Dark Chocolate, you don't. It's like, so basically, if it's older than the 90s, unless it's like primo, like year one is like transcends time. Let's be real. That thing in Dark Knight, Watchmen, Swamp Thing, Alan Moore, all that stuff transcends time because they're great comics.
Maybe year one a little more than Dark Knight, huh?
Whatever, dude. Don't even start with me on this one.
People on Twitter know.
Yeah, they know. But here's the thing. I respect it because I grew up in the era, like 80s, so I'm used to it. And like you said, Chris, you gotta look at it, judge it a lot differently. And Grunwald back in the day, again, he's not gonna win rewards for his writing, but as far as like, I think he's a good comic book writer only because he knows the medium so well, and he does craft a pretty fun like story. And I think it's a good point too. You said too, Dark Chocolate, that if you're under 35, you're not going to love it. But if you go, again, in my opinion, I think if you love Hawkeye, I think you'll enjoy it. It's not going to let your set your world on fire, but it's a solid little story. I think it's worth picking up if you're a fan of Hawkeye. So,
and especially if you're a fan of Mockingbird too.
That's a good point too.
Very true.
Yeah, and she's a standout character. I thought for the time, especially then, she was a pretty independent person. I mean, she was into Hawkeye, but I mean it's kind of a love story, right?
Yeah, I was kind of just like, why do you like him so much? He's
a guy, he's a girl. This is happening. Electricity, I mean, come on.
First of all, Hawkeye was jacked, and he's always in his underwear at some point.
Word.
Didn't she say, like, in the series too, like, you got to put, I can't focus if there's a man in his underwear holding a gun. It's not. And he's like, okay, I'll get dressed.
Yeah. No, she's also when they run into Captain America, and she's like, man, he's hot. And he's like,
another blonde man. She has a type, right?
She does. There you go. He's being like, dude, Grunwald's setting it up, man. He's being consistent. He's being, how pissed off like Hawkeye got. He's like, oh. Of course, Captain America comes in, stealing my thunder. It's like, hell yeah. So anyway, yeah. So for people, it sounds like it's kind of a mixed bag for our opinions here. Which again, the whole point of MCU required reading is just for people who are diehards. And if you're on the fence about Hawkeye comics, maybe it's one you don't pick up. If you're really into Hawkeye, maybe you check it out. So
I will say this: if you're listening to this, probably go pick it up.
Yeah, well, that's fair. That's a fair point,
because we're talking about 2 different pools of people. I more so mean like, so it's like, oh, I'm running to the comic book shop. Is there anything specific I should like pick up? Unless they've specifically been super interested in Hawkeye, I probably wouldn't recommend this. But
that's fair. That's legit. That's
well,
and
point. Honestly, too, like how many shops are probably actively stocking this story?
Yeah. Well, it just came out in Epic.
Oh, it did. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it is part of a big. Well, it's this and a bunch of other stories.
Sure,
right?
yeah, but at least it's available.
It just got released.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Which, by the way, Dark Chocolate, if you haven't gone down the Epic line yet, like that's where you need to go, bro. Okay. Epics are chef's kiss. I resisted all the Star Wars epics for a while, and now I'm like, nope, not doing that again. And I've been rebuying them, and I've been like, I only missed a few of the harder ones to get, but I already have them in like Dark Horse stuff, so I'm good. But the chronological order they do it in, anyway, it's great. Anyway, so we have one more comment we're gonna talk about. We're gonna wrap it up here, and I'm very curious now. You kind of brought this. You kind of seemed like you kind of like this issue a little bit more. It seemed like Dark Chocolate, and we're going to talk about this. This is Generations Hawkeye 1. When back in like 2000, like 15, whatever it was, back then they're Marvel was doing a big, heavy generations kind of thing, meaning like the whole not with franchise, but the what am I trying to say here? Legacy heroes, where it's like it's not just a Clint Barton's only Hawkeye. Now we have Kate Bishop. Now there's two Captain Americas. There's multiple Novas. They were going to multiple Thors. They're going with the idea of the legacy heroes, which is more of a DC thing. But now Marvel, thanks to the MCU, obviously, has become a legacy hero mantle idea. And they had this really cool crossover, which people don't really talk about a lot. And there was more than one good comic book, and it was basically centered around this for whatever reason. I forgot why, but all these heroes were going back in time and different times, and they were these different versions of characters or different characters' legacies were talking. And Kate went back to talk to Hawkeye, and became this comic book here, which is Marvel Comics Generations Hawkeye. And when I bought this back in the day, I was surprised how much I liked it, and it always stuck with me when we got back into the Disney Plus series. I always kept thinking about it, which, by the way, I love this Kate Bishop costume. I wish she'd wear this. I think this is great. It doesn't show up in the comic book. Doesn't matter. I think this is fantastic. I love this comic book a lot. I didn't know. I forgot Kelly Thompson wrote it. Kelly Thompson is by far one of the most underrated comic writers in the industry right now. I know she's well known and gets a lot of work, but everything she's writing a new Black Widow series, which I'm desperately behind on. I need to catch up. I love it. She's writing some great Captain Marvel's comic books in the last couple of years, which I've been really loving. And I forgot she wrote this. This is a really solid comic book. And when I watched the TV show, and I was thinking about the Kate Bishop and the David Aja Matt Fraction series, it's a great companion piece to that. And it definitely feels to me the evolution of the character of Kate Bishop and what the dynamics they have together, even though they're drastically different in the MCU, you get to see it on display here still, and just how effective and how great of a team they are. It was great to see, and I'm curious, Dark Chocolate, this is more of your wheelhouse. What's your take on this comic book, Hawkeye Generations issue 1?
Yeah, I loved this. It was just it was something that you can jump into, and it being a one-off, and it was self-sufficient, and it goes into their relation, like it does the thing where you can glean all the lessons from context, and then at the end they're like, just so you remember, this is why we were doing this.
right
and I but like their dynamic, and seeing that a young Clint who's just like, why does your costume have these holes in it? Like, that's stupid. and I've always felt that. I've always been like, that's weird. But yeah, these like out of time pieces, I love. I just love time travel and stories. I'm sorry.
All right.
We got the origin of the boomerang arrow.
Right. Yeah. Right. That was great. I mean, I was surprised. They did take like that whole boomerang conversation was right out of this comic book, which I forgot. Yeah. I was like, oh, crap. But yeah. So I'm curious. Like, did you like all the Easter eggs of the villains they had in there?
I didn't catch all of them. I know I didn't, because I didn't recognize all of the villains.
Right. There's a lot of them. Yeah.
No, I did love getting to see. I mean, just the concept of like this battle of the marksmans throughout all of Marvel, both hero and villain, is just it's just one of those like inspired ideas that you just like you want to see, but how do you write that? And then they did. It did kind of have the the Brian Michael Bendis problem, where like the catalyst, and they don't know what to do with it, so then the person that like caused everything to happen is like, okay, never mind. and it's kind of like,
yeah, it was wrapped up pretty quick. I will admit that.
But no, this was it was a great story, and was just a fun read that you can jump in and out of really quick. This one I would highly recommend to anyone that enjoyed the show.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I definitely feel like, and again, it's a quick read, and and like it honestly gives you, I think, a good context of the MCU, or excuse me, the Marvel 616 universe. So I feel like if you're kind of trepidatious of getting into comic books, I think this, in my opinion, I'm curious, Darth Chocolate, if you would agree. Would you think it's a good kind of like a good beginner comic book for people to read to kind of get into like how things kind of work, kind of is in general?
Yeah, it's fun. It's fast paced. Fast paced. It's full of all the comic booky stuff, but still has the um, heart behind it. No,
Right
it's
on.
it's a good small package thing
Yeah,
that encapsulates all of what makes comics comics. So
right
yeah, I
on,
can see that.
right on, right on. Mr. Chris, what's your take on this comic book?
I actually really liked all of these one shots when they
Yeah,
came
I did
out.
too. I liked a lot of them.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought that the the conceit that kind of ties them all together is relatively loose, but that's what it wants to be. You know, it's just looking for an excuse to compare more quote unquote classic iterations of longstanding characters with
Mhm.
their modern counterparts. And
Right.
the ones that I mean, I thought that the Iron Man one was good. I liked the Spider-Man one, and I think both of those were written by Bendis. The Hulk one was cool. The Captain America one was my favorite. But this one was also just solid, you know. I mean, putting Kate in a little bit of a different position where she is maybe in on more even footing with Clint
Yeah.
was an
Agreed.
interesting idea. You know,
Yeah.
it was a cool way, and like he even at the end of the issue kind of flirts with her a little bit, and she's
Oh, I
like,
love that.
yeah,
I
God.
know. She's like, ugh.
Yeah, because she can't
Give me
possibly imagine. But I mean, he don't know, right? It's just like
It's his
that's
character though.
Clint Barton.
He's just a,
He would have done
he's a
that.
big doofus. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And I love
es-
she's like, oh God.
her
especially at
response
that
though is
time.
like, "Hey, can you think of women as like people,
Yeah, I know. He's like,
please?"
what?
And he's like, "Well, I don't want to limit myself." And
I
she's like,
know.
"Oh, that
Yeah,
actually
that
kind
makes
of
logical sense,
makes
kind
a
of.
weird kind of
Oh
sense."
my God, that was great. See, Thompson, dude, she is really good. I really want her more. I know on the Spidey podcast we do for the Spider-Man show, she did some recent issues of Spider-Man, which people were kind of like they expected more out of her, I guess. And I'm like, they were solid enough. They weren't groundbreaking, but I liked it. I would love to see her write more Spider-Man comic books. I know she did like a mini series of Spidey, I think. I need to pick
Which
that up
was
and read it.
cool. There
I
was
didn't
a
read it.
really
I didn't read it.
my favorite part of that series, there was one issue with Captain America. It was just like a team up, and there's a great moment where Cap picks J. Jonah Jameson up by the scruff of his neck. I'll just leave it at that. If
All
you
right,
haven't read it,
I need to read it. I need.
you should,
It's a blind spot.
you should
Blind
check it
spot.
out. Yeah, it's fun. But no, when it comes to this one, I mean the artwork was really clean,
Yeah.
and the different incorporation of the characters that all have the same kind of gimmick. It didn't feel stale. Like it was really dynamic, but it was also an interesting kind of throwback in comparison to the way that the stories used to be around the time of the miniseries that we read
Right.
and the more modern era. I mean,
Yeah, I didn't think about that. Yeah, you're a good point.
I thought that if you look like between two pages of this book, uh, Kate has a monologue that's in the more modern text boxes, and then in the next page, Clint has a monologue that's in the thought balloons that you never see
Oh,
anymore.
dude, yeah, I love thought
Interesting.
balloons.
And
Oh, I
it's a
love.
cool, it's just kind of a cool little stylistic throwback that I really appreciated. And
Yeah.
and I don't know if I would have necessarily picked it. I don't think I picked it up the first time that I read it, but coming off of the Grunwald series, I was like, wow, you know, this because you don't see the thought balloons very much anymore, especially in superhero comics.
I
And
know.
she's yanking that out, and I thought that was a really cool idea. But it also helped to illustrate the things that do make them similar, even though
Yeah.
they both have different levels of things to prove, as we know from their future interactions. So yeah, I think that this is really solid, but really honestly, Generations at large, I think
I
it's kind of
agree.
underrated.
It's very underrated. I haven't read all of them, but I've read most of the issues that we talked about, and I definitely enjoy most of them. The Hulk, I remember the Hulk one being pretty good. So yeah, Generations is good, but this comic really stuck out to me at one of my favorites, and I think it's because it really captivates Hawkeye from back in the day and Kate, and that whole dynamic of them together is really interesting and fun, and it was a good. I like the premise a lot. All the marksmen together and the swordsman tie-in again, that whole thing. it was really cool. So
and she got like firsthand perspective on Swordsman and like how Swordsman kind of screwed him up a little bit to a degree, you know, and that might not be. I think it also read a little bit differently coming directly off of the Grunwald stuff because they directly made reference to Swordsman's importance to forging the guy that we know.
Yeah.
So her being able to see that, it just in terms of my own reading experience, it was kind of cool to see how that translated further and how she was able to quickly interpret, wow, this guy's kind of messed up, and I can see why Clint has some issues.
Right. Well, this is great. I think this show has went as far as I thought it would be. I thought there'd be some struggles with the series a little bit with the Grunwald stuff because again, it's old and it's not, you know, I was born the year before this came out, so that should give you some perspective. Because I just turned 40 years old. So, but I still think there's merit to it. And that's why I recommended it. Why I think it's considered required reading, and I love to hear honest perspectives. I think it's great that we all love the Generations comic because it is a really good series. It's a good series, but the comic itself has a really good introduction. I think if you want to get into comic books and you're looking to get into, you know, start the comic binge, if you will, I think it's a good place to start. So, yeah, I guess we'll wrap it up here. Again, I want to keep these things short, under an hour, because I'm just trying to be efficient, people. Efficient. And I'm really hungry. I haven't eaten dinner yet, so I'm starving. But I'll kind of go with you, Dark Chocolate. Any wrap up thoughts, and where can people find your awesome, amazing content, sir?
Yeah, thank you for having me on. It's always fun, you know, and I want to
bless me.
I don't know, I might start doing some similar stuff because I like this blueprint. So
all right.
That's cool. I'm gonna have my own Dark Knight show, and it's gonna air
all right. We'll
right
cross
before
over.
yours.
We'll do crossover. Yeah, it's all good. It's all good.
No, I like Hawkeye. To me, wasn't a super relevant character for a very, very long time. He was the guy in that old arcade, you know, 90s game that you just didn't pick. You know, like if you had to, you'd pick him. But I love, you know, bringing him to the forefront, and I like going back and like checking out these stories. I'm definitely going to jump more into these Generations because I didn't read these. I think I did read the Generations Iron Man, but I was mostly sad because I was expecting Infamous Iron Man to show up, and
that would have been cool,
dude. Infamous Iron Man. Oh God, Dark Chocolate, me character. And you, bro. I'm telling you, 2 peas in a pod.
That being said, I'm gonna go back and check out the rest of them. Anyone who's watching this, if you haven't checked out these comics, highly recommend. But yeah, you can find me. I mostly do at this point in time. I pretty much only do Star Wars content because there's been so much stuff coming out that it's but I'm going to be able to take a short break after Book of Boba Fett wraps up, and then we'll be outside of the High Republic for a little bit of time, so I'll be able to do some other stuff. But yeah, I'm Darth Choco on TikTok, where I make most of my content, also on YouTube. Darth Choco 7 on Twitter, and those are the main places that you can find me. I have a podcast called the High Ground Podcast. You can find it live on my YouTube channel every Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time, or you can find it wherever pods are being cast. And yeah, we pick a random topic. I bring on just different people from, you know, other YouTube creators or Twitter people or TikTok creators, and we just pick a random topic and start talking Star Wars. I think this week we're going to be talking relationship between Anakin Skywalker and Mace Windu. It's going to be an exciting one. So,
dude,
yeah,
complicated.
That is rad. I hate Mace Windu. I think he's a dick.
I love Mace Windu because he's a dick.
Right. But dude, like, don't get me started.
He's cautious. Does that make him a dick?
He's right in everything he does. Was absolutely right.
In the movies, for the most part, yes. In the Clone Wars, he's way like, dude, the Yoda arc. I mean, he's like, He's just actually no. Maybe I'm getting him confused with Miyundi. I think I'm getting him confused with
Well, Kiadi Mundi can get fired out of a cannon into the sun for all I care.
all right, you know what? Okay, that's what that's what we'll agree on. Yeah,
My brother texted me and insists that Mace Windu is going to be the ultimate villain of the Book of Boba Fett. And I was like, dude,
no, we don't.
that would be cool, but
I love that stuff for comic books purposes. 'Cause that's my bag. I mean, I love Rise of Skywalker. And everyone hates it because of Palpatine, but like I love that shit. But Mace Windu would be no. It's too much.
Some people need to stay dead. I'm sorry.
Or some people need to stay dead in physical form, but stay alive spiritually and stick around. And anyway, okay, I digress.
Now maybe Coleman Trebor can come back and take down Boba Fett because his dad took him down. That's what I want to see. Dark side Coleman Trebor, stupid dinosaur head.
I love it. Well, listen, I'm gonna try to have you back on for some Star Wars stuff. Hopefully, coming up for comic books in a couple of weeks when you have more time. And again, seriously, man, I really appreciate you coming on. Like, it means a lot. Like, you're awesome. Like, you're great, and you're loads of fun to talk to. So, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Chris, hi.
People know where to find me.
They know where to find you.
The Twitter handle's right there. We're planning on getting together pretty soon for another episode of Discovery Debrief. Discovery is coming back pretty soon, so we're pretty excited to see how the rest of the season shakes out. Prodigy is back, and Prodigy is a great show. It's an underrated show. Maybe even a show Star Wars fans would also appreciate too.
I've never even heard of it. I was about to start singing "Smack My Bitch Up."
I am a fire starter.
It's the first like all ages oriented Star Trek show that's computer animated and through Nickelodeon.
So it's like Clone Wars, but not nearly as good.
It's actually got kind of a Rebels flavor to it, but
I've heard that, yeah.
like dives like it delves into some really interesting and unseen corners of the Star Trek universe, which is cool for longstanding people like me who've been devoted to it for so long. Other than that, I am starting to develop an idea for a new Comics on Consoles episode.
I saw those hints.
Yeah. So Avengers as a video game, it's got its strengths and it's got its weaknesses, but I revisited another game recently that made me wonder if it might actually be better. And weirdly enough, it was Disney Infinity. So there's a lot of interesting Star Wars stuff in Disney Infinity as well. It's a very simple game because it's designed for all ages, but does that matter if you have a good time playing it?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
I would say no, but maybe other people have different perspectives. But I'm thinking of maybe developing a Comics on Consoles episode dedicated to that. Nice. Because it's a really interesting period for comics gaming, and it takes from a lot of different genres that people might not expect. Spider-Man swinging and Thor flying and Captain America shield throwing, all of that stuff in the same unified game. Interesting possibilities. So we'll see if I can develop that a little further.
Well, you guys know where to follow me for the most part, but at Herman22 with 2 N's, aka P Thug. Thank you for coming and watching the show. If you watch all the way through, you're like one of the 3 people. I love you. Subscribe, like, all that stuff. But yeah, this I've got some more fun stuff planned. I just got a PS5 for my 40th birthday. So
nice.
So I'm gonna.
Those exist?
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. Hey, listen, my wife told me she had to scour for it, and Chris helped her. So, but here's the thing. I'll probably do some more live gaming with Chris online. I've been playing Guardians, having a blast. So I think we're gonna have some kind of Guardians content where I'll be talking, comic books while we play. And do something like that for other games we're doing, like the Avengers. I'm eventually played. Chris got me that game, and I've been meaning to play it forever. But now I have a reason to. But I want to play Guardians first, then Avengers, then Miles Morales, which I'm excited to play. So definitely have some more video game comic book content coming at one point. But again, a Gotham Knight coming starting next week with Robin and Batman. Chris, excuse me. Hopefully, how the Ryans, Ryan Lauer from the Batman Book Club, and Ryan Haas from Batman on Film, all join us next week and other fun guests. So yeah, I'm really excited about the future, and everyone, yeah, thanks for coming on. And Chris, take us out as always, my friend.
Read more comics.